Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are going to build your own propagation tray. It's very easy to do, and I found it very, very useful in rooting cuttings, starting seeds, so many different uses. It's very quick, and I'm going to take you through how I do this and what I use. So let's start. First things first, I start with any type of either a tray or a plastic or glass. It could be anything really. Anything that's waterproof that will hold water. It doesn't have to have sides this high. I go back and forth between things with sides that go this high and something like, let's say, this over here. Just a tray, not very tall. But it should be able to hold some water in the event that you are going to be flooding the system, and I'll show you what that looks like. But aside from that, you also will need some sort of a pot, or I use these plastic cups. They're recyclable. You can reuse them, and then you could put them with your plastics to recycle after you're done. Very easy, very cheap, easy to come by. I also then use cut yarn, pieces of yarn like about this big. And what the yarn is going to be a wick system. I'll show you what that looks like. For the bottom of the tray or the bin, I use a thin felt. You can get this at any craft store. A lot of places sell this, but I go to the craft place because it's very cheap. And they come in all different colors. I don't recommend using something with a lot of colors. This one happens to be black, but I usually use a neutral or undyed color just to keep it as clean as possible for the plants. This one happens to be black, but it'll show up better for you guys and you'll see what I'm talking about. And last but not least, not last but not least, actually, we have our plant cuttings. These are coleus because I love coleus. Have 4 different cuttings here. All of them have at least 2 nodes, as you can see. And I then have my soil that I use. It is a peat-based soil, well-draining. What I like to use is any type of a well-draining cactus or succulent mix, and then I add in at least a third perlite. You can see how much perlite is in here. I have a separate bag of perlite, and then I just measure and I mix. This way it stays well aerated and does not compact. It dries up pretty quickly, but it does not retain too much moisture. So that is what we got going on here. So first things first, what I do is I set up my bin. Very easy. You take your felt or whatever material you're going to use and you set it flat in the bottom of the bin. It's very, very porous and it holds moisture. It wicks its own moisture, so if you pour water in there, it absorbs it right away. So you can see it will serve its purpose. So next what we do is we take our little cups. If you're using a pot, chances are like the little 2 or 3 inch pots, chances are they have their holes already in them, the plastic pots. But because these don't, all you do is you cut a small sliver out of the edge. You can see that there. I hope you can see that. So I'm going to do that to this one. Since I have 4 cuttings, I'll do it 4 times. 2. Come on, cups. 3. And 4. Okay, they all have their slits in the bottom corner. Next, what I do is you take your yarn, which is the little wick we're going to be using. And the reason why I do this, you probably don't even really need it. I have some setups where I don't have the wick, but I do it just because I'm not going to be watering from the top throughout this rooting process. I'm going to be watering the bin. So what's going to happen is if I water from the top, I don't know how much is going to be going through. I'm going to have to look in between all my little cups to see if the water's coming out of the drain hole. So I like to water from the bottom, knowing that it's going to wick up from the root zone first up towards the top of the plant. This is good because I can see, okay, after about 30 minutes, is there any water left in here? There shouldn't be. I don't want them sitting in water. So I'll be able to drain off or absorb the rest with another towel or something like that. So the wick is really just to water from the bottom up. So far we've got 1, put in your next wick. You just push it through the slit and you leave it on the inside too. I don't know if you can see in there. These wicks are a little bit small. I have a bigger one here somewhere. Where is it? Okay, like this one's a little bit bigger. So I like to have the wick have at least like an inch or a half inch out of the bottom of the cup, and then an inch or an inch and a half of yarn on the inside of the cup. This way I can hold it a little bit higher than just the bottom. Excuse me. When I fill it with the soil, the wick will be up kind of like halfway up the cup. This way the moisture that wicks up will not just be on the bottom of the soil, it'll wick up to at least wherever the string, the yarn ends inside the cup. Okay, and last one here. Oops, this yarn wants to get away from me. Let's just put this wick right in here, like so. And we are ready for the next step. Next, we take our potting mix, okay? I like to keep it fluffy at first, okay? So I just pour it into the cup. Just want to make sure you guys can see. I don't fill it all the way to the top, obviously, but what's going to happen is once I put my cuttings in, I'm going to have to push down, you know, around the cutting to make sure that there isn't too much air in there. So you can see there's like I guess maybe half inch, no soil, a half inch from the top of the cup is filled with soil. Okay. Next one we do the same thing. And if I wasn't talking, it would be done much quicker. All right, pack it in just a little bit. This one can use a little bit more. And this method, I mean, I've propagated in many different ways, but this method, they root so quickly. Like my coleus cuttings, let's see which ones, these were the first. These guys I did maybe a month ago. They grew so quickly, I was able to take cuttings from the cuttings, and the cuttings I took from these guys are these cuttings. And these guys are gonna get ready to have, to give me another cutting, as well as those, because they branched off where I cut. There are two buds above the leaf nodes, so those are going to give me new cuttings as well. So it's a very fast process, especially with coleus. But using the wicking and the mat in these bins, it just works so well. It's low maintenance. As long as you have a grow light, you know, or a source of bright light for them, they will do just fine. Okay, we're almost done here, guys. Okay, we're filling up our last one. There we go. Make sure you guys can see. Yep, you can see. So now what's left to do is we take our cuttings. Now, again, I said this in another video. People always say, oh, you have to remove all the leaves or they're going to lose too much moisture. For these in particular, I didn't have that problem. I haven't found that to be a problem for these coleus, especially because there's such a humid environment with this mat being full of water. So, well, not full of water, but soaked with water, let's put it that way. So I'm not even going to cut these bottom two leaves off. So I'm going to have 6 leaves plus the bud, and that's going to be totally fine. So I just kind of hold it like this, stick it into the soil, and now I push the soil in around the cutting just a little bit, hold it in place, get rid of some air pockets, and we're ready to go. Next up, we're going to do the same thing. Push it in and secure the soil around your little baby. Okay, that one's done. Next one, into the soil, push down around it, we're good. Next one, push down around it, and we're good. Now I do have that bottom node right under the soil surface. So these leaves, the bottom leaves, their petiole, their leaf stem, is under the soil, but the leaf is not under the soil. And these dry out relatively quickly. I'm not going to say they dry out overnight, but they dry out to the point where this leaf stem is not going to be submerged in water or in moist soil for too long, which wouldn't be a problem anyway. But I'm just saying that it's okay if you kind of bury the stem a little bit in there. So we're pretty much done. The last thing to do is to add your water. For the first watering, if you want to make sure that the plants are saturated all the way through, you can water from the top to start. I do that only the first time. The only time I would do that any other time is if I notice or if I've forgotten to water the mat and they dried out a lot. And you can see that the soil on top is kind of waterproof. Sometimes that happens if you forget to water your plants for a while. That's the only other time that I would water from the top. Otherwise, this is all you do. Fill it in so that the entire mat gets saturated. If it has a little pool of water at first, that's fine because these plants still haven't absorbed all their moisture from their wick. So a little bit of water, like you can see, hopefully you can see how there's water there on the bottom? That's all going to be absorbed pretty quickly because these guys, the rest of the soil is still dry. And that is all there is to it. It's very, very easy. And just to show you an example, this was one of the original mothers. Well, this was a baby of the mother that I cut, and one of these over here is the baby. And you can see I've gotten my 2 shoots coming up. As these grow, I'll probably let them grow 2 nodes, and after the second node, I will then cut to take another cutting. That's a good way to make them bushy. If you just do them on one, like if you wait for 1 node to come up and then you cut above that 1 node, you can do that, but there's a chance, sometimes there's a delay on one side because you get two buds that pop out once you cut above a node. So you can get a delay in one side or the other. Sometimes they don't come out perfectly like this, like 2, one on each side. So I like to leave 2 cuttings underneath. So if I cut, there's a chance that both will, or 1 and then 1 on the lower node, or you can get 4, 2 on the upper, 2 on the lower. But I want to give this plant enough of a chance to get bushy as quickly as possible, so I'll give it 2 nodes to bush out each time. Other than that, it is very, very easy. You can see the new babies popped out after I cut this one. Very easy. And I'm telling you, it's going to be so much easier because you don't have to water each plant each time. Just water the bin. As long as you have a little bit of moisture in there, a layer of water, it's going to be absorbed by all the plants you have in here, because I'm going to fill this all up just like I did with these guys. You are fine. And then later in the week, just check them out, see how they're doing. They'll probably still be holding moisture in the soil, but that's all you have to do. And within a week, you'll see growth already. The roots start sprouting usually in like 4 to 5 days, and then you start to see growth from the plant because they're getting some moisture and some nutrients, and you'll be able to take more cuttings and more and more and more. And then you'll have a million like I have. You don't see them all here, but they're all over the place. I love coleus. That's one of the main reasons why I love coleus, because they're so easy to work with, but they're also easy to experiment with to find better ways to do things. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions on anything that you saw me do here, or any of the materials that I use, or any more questions about the soil that I use, just leave a comment. I will get right back to you. I love, love, love talking plants, as you know, and I love propagating and experimenting and all that stuff. So yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe because there's plenty of these coming, and I will see you in the next video.